Wait, what happened?
It's coming.
Okay.
Oh, nice effect.
Okay, hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. So I've been working on a comprehensive study of Prince's spiritual journey for about 8 years. I started it in graduate school at OU, and I presented the first half of my research from his birth through the 1980s at the Prince Conference in the UK last year. So today I will be focusing on 1990 through 2016, and with only 10 minutes, I can't go into everything, so I'll provide a broad overview and some highlights. But before I get into that, I just want to briefly go over the connection between Prince's spirituality and Minneapolis. So it is very much anchored here. He attended the Glendale Seventh-day Adventist Church with his maternal grandmother, Lucille. And I spoke with a couple former church members who remember him. Don Keith remembers Prince coming in a little sailor hat and suit when he was 2 or 3 years old. And Ruby Long remembers Prince reciting poems with the other kids on the Sabbath when he was 5 or 6 years old. He also attended Park Avenue United Methodist, Peter, you could relate to that, in junior high, according to his former youth leader, Art Erickson. And of course, he returned to get married there as well. And then also later, when he became a Jehovah's Witness, he attended the Kingdom Hall of the St. Louis Park congregation. And I actually went there last night to attend a service just to kind of get a feel of it. And I talked to a couple elders, so I'll be sharing that information a little later. So my main points of my book are that Prince has always explored spirituality in his life and music, and sexuality played a significant role in his spiritual development. And then also Prince eventually adopted a spiritual mission to make others aware of God's existence. So I divided my time range into 3 sections: spiritual wilderness during the 1990s, realization, which is how he described his conversion to the Jehovah's Witness faith, and then doubts and unanswered questions, which explores whether he may or may not have been moving away from the faith in the later years of his life. So my book is really built on the interviews that I've been able to do over the years. Over on your right-hand side, the bolded names are the people who can really speak to 1990 through 2016. But of course, there's some overlap there, so a lot of those folks can also speak to the 1980s. And then I also analyzed his lyrics, performances, imagery, and media coverage. So by 1990, Prince's beliefs were firmly rooted in Christianity. Just 2 years earlier, on the Love Sexy album, he acknowledged Jesus as his God. And then on the Love Sexy tour, he performed all of his explicit music in the first half, and then all the spiritual music from Love Sexy in the second half. And in the middle, he staged the death of Camille, his alter ego, which you could interpret as the death of his sexual side. And so then in 1990, he releases Graffiti Bridge, which I think is one of his most significant Christian statements. And in my opinion, he also foreshadowed this movie in a Rolling Stone interview in 1985, and also in an Ebony interview in 1986, where he talked about wanting to make a movie about his belief in God. There's a possibility that he could have also been talking about the movie The Dawn, which is a spiritual movie that he also wanted to make, but The Dawn as a concept and then Graffiti Bridge, they both deal with the struggle of good versus evil. So in Graffiti Bridge, an angel sacrifices her life to keep Prince, as the kid, on his spiritual path, and also encourage him to continue to do his spiritual music. And I included a lyric from Still Would Stand All Time, which closes the film because I think it summarizes the message of the film. So many times I thought I could not make it, life was closing in, I just knew I couldn't take it. That's when love opened its arms. You better run to the light, leave your past behind. So I've highlighted love and light because in the Bible, love is used as a metaphor for God, and Prince employed the same metaphor as early as Love Sexy and would continue to do so. And you can see with Opened Its Arms the personification that he uses. And then also light is used as a metaphor for Jesus Christ in the Bible. So for further research, I would like to explore to what extent Prince also used that metaphor. Can you change? So something changed in 1991. beginning with Diamonds and Pearls, where he returned to elevating sexuality over spirituality, as he had done before, and he would frequently do that throughout the decade. And I explore the commercial reasons why he may have done that, but I really feel that he was trying to reconcile his sexual side with his spiritual side, and sometimes they lived in harmony, but a lot of the time he was still forever searching for the spiritual substitute for sex, which is a line from Graffiti Bridge. And he did this by incorporating myriad religions and spiritual concepts in his art. He still made Christian references, but he included a lot of ambiguous language. So he used the term love, which is likely a code word for God, but he was using that more than explicitly saying Jesus Christ or the Lord. An example of that is his performance of Purple Rain. So in the 1980s, at times he would say, "Let the Lord guide you" to the Purple Rain. A lot of the times in the 1990s, he started to say, "Let love guide you" to the Purple Rain. And then he would later go back to saying, "Let Jesus Christ guide you" to the Purple Rain. But as far as the early mid-90s, it was "Let love guide you." And I interviewed Robin Power, one of his proteges, and she also told me she had a romantic relationship with Prince. And the quote she gave me really spoke to this point. She said, "He talked about living in the moment. He talked about God being love. Did he talk about Jesus per se? No. We didn't have long spiritual conversations. It was more or less about society and the people just being believers of love." So throughout the 1990s, Prince explored reincarnation and karma. His ex-wife Maite spoke at length about his beliefs in past lives, the third eye, astrology, and other religious studies. So it's really a universalist approach to religion, but I titled it Wilderness because it seemed like for all his exploration, he wasn't able to quite find peace in his personal life. So that arguably changed by 2003 when he was officially baptized in the Jehovah's Witness faith, according to what Larry Graham told me. And I interviewed Rhonda Smith, his longtime bass player, about this transformation that she saw. And she's not a Jehovah's Witness, and she actually made a point not to go to Kingdom Hall when everyone else was going. But she still told me, "The difference that I saw was the sureness that you see in an individual who feels more centered, feels more righteous about what they're saying. He would talk the talk, but he could back it up with scripture." And so in my book, I analyze, how his new approach to his music, retiring his explicit repertoire and changing his lyrics, toning down the sexual content in his new music, and incorporating Jehovah's Witness doctrine in his music as well. And so I also interviewed Tamar, his protege, who recorded a lot of the spiritual tracks on 3121 with him. And she said, "Me and Prince were always on a spiritual plane that was going the same way. And what I found was that he was so convicted in certain things with the Jehovah's Witness lifestyle, I could tell after me it was a fight because he started singing some of his old music again, and I think a lot of it had to do with association. He didn't have anyone around him that was really a truthful, honest person. He was wearing sunglasses all of a sudden, which to me is a way of detaching yourself from the people around you." And that brings us to 2013, where I felt there was another transition with Prince. And not only did he return to doing his old music, but you could even see through the imagery here, the emphasis on the mystical concept of the third eye again. And of course that was in his music, that was with his band, Third Eye Girl. And the new music that he created was a bit more sexual than it had been, with songs like When She Comes, and he snuck naughty lines into some of his other tracks as well. And so I talked to Adrian Crutchfield, who was his sax player during this time, and he said, "I don't think his belief system could be defined by religion. What it seems to me is that the whole approach to witnessing was him searching for that higher power, and he found certain aspects of it in that religion, but he found certain aspects of God in music. He found certain aspects of God in women." And I also talked to Craig Rice, who I think will be here a little later today. He worked with Prince in different capacities going back to the 1980s. And I interviewed him in 2014, and at that time he said, "I think what we confuse sometimes is the fact that he's got a religion, so he's done. I don't think this is the last place for him. He's going to continue to evolve." Fortunately, we have Prince's own words to consider. In a Rolling Stone interview in 2014, he said, "Anything I believed then, I believe even more now. It's just expanded." And that was in response to his question about his Jehovah's Witness beliefs. And then also talking to Larry said that Prince was still a Jehovah's Witness when he passed, and other people around Prince told me that Larry was still a major part of his life. Last night, when I attended the Kingdom Hall, the elders told me that Prince last attended on their memorial of Christ's death, which is an annual celebration that they have, and that was a few weeks before Prince passed in 2016. And they also said he continued to report his witnessing every month until he died. And George Cook is the name of the elder who told me that, and there was another elder as well. So where I am in my research is that I don't think he completely abandoned the Jehovah's Witness faith, but he just opened himself up to other spiritualities and was able to find a balance that he necessarily wasn't able to find in the 1990s. So that's kind of where I am now. And so I'm currently finishing my book. I'm looking for publishers. A lot of them have told me that people aren't interested in Prince's spirituality, so I hope I can prove them wrong. So you can follow my journey doing this at apurpleday.indecember.com. Thank you.
We do have.
Consider a Kickstarter campaign or something so that you can self-publish it, because obviously there is a market.
Have you taken a picture of this room for your publisher?
I guess that's a good idea. To your question, that's a good idea. I think I was kind of waiting till the end to go the self-publishing route just to see what's out there. But yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'm kind of wary of asking for money, but since you suggested it, I'm going to remember. Thank you.
You had mentioned that Maite had talked about his belief in reincarnation. Have you also listened to the interview with Vanity/Denise Matthews during her Playboy days, where she talked about how they met in a previous life also?
Oh, wow. I didn't know
So
about
it's on
that.
YouTube.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just the audio, and it was, I think, with Playboy, so
Okay.
it was earlier, not her looking back later in life.
Awesome.
So it might
Thank
help you.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, on the topic of reincarnation, I'm wondering if you have any notion of whether his beliefs in reincarnation proved to be resilient for him with the loss of his son.
I think so. I mean, if you think about the song "Come Back," he seemed to, on the Truth album, that seemed to give him some sort of peace with that. But I think, when I was looking at his later albums, and that's still, I want to say it's maybe "Find My Way Back Home," songs like that on his later albums. It seemed that he still had that belief in reincarnation. So I think that still was able to give him a form of peace. But maybe it wasn't strong enough in the late 1990s, and he gravitated toward the Jehovah's Witness faith to give him more peace after losing his son as well. That's what it appears to me. So it's interesting. I think the rest of my research is kind of finding out what led him to finding that peace, if he did find it before he passed away, with all of the different beliefs that he wasn't able to find during the 1990s. I don't know if it's just maturity as time goes on, but I think that's a question I'm still trying to answer. Yes.
Sorry. Do you have any sense as to, I don't know about the Jehovah's Witness faith at all, really, but do you have any sense as to how that works, that you can combine other things with that, or is that going to be a tension? It's my sense that you sort of aren't supposed to, that it's that way, or then you either are or you aren't.
Yeah.
And so I just wondered about that. Is there anything in which that's reflected on, or that anybody, I imagine nobody in the Jehovah's Witness faith is saying anything to you about that, but just that tension between his presentation later is a little more ambiguous.
I think so. I don't think there's.
I'm sorry. I just asked. I don't know about the Jehovah's Witness faith, but it's my sense that you're sort of in or you're not in. Mm-hmm. And so, how do you kind of negotiate that, or how does the faith negotiate that with Prince as such a kind of prominent member when he's kind of not so much appearing that way later? I just wasn't I mean, I don't know who you might talk to who would even say anything about that.
I know. That's the sense I got, that there's no room for
Yeah.
negotiating that. And
Right.
I think we can see that, like when Prince first converted, about how he wouldn't sing certain songs, he wouldn't use any language, and then he got a little bit lenient over time. So that is something to consider. How did the people in his church, the people, Larry Graham, take that? Larry didn't mention that when I talked to him. But the elders in the church, they said Prince wasn't there that often. I mean, he was there just before he passed away, but it's not like they saw him every week or even every month. So I don't know how.
Did they ever see him every week or every month?
I didn't get
Okay.
that sense that they did. And he went to another Kingdom Hall in Chanhassen, and of course he had one in LA, but he's constantly touring and
Yeah,
performing.
right.
So I think the sense that I got is that they just accepted that he's not going to be here. So I don't know to what extent that they paid attention to him and his new music and direction, because what they told me is they were like, Prince just wanted to be a regular guy when he was here.
Yeah,
We treated him
yeah,
like a
right.
regular guy. So I don't know if they're going out and getting artificial age.
Yeah.
I don't know. But that's a great question.
We have time for one more,
She
so
actually
take care.
Well, there's
Oh,
Oh, no.
go ahead.
Erica, have you thought any about including the spirituality that has come from Prince to people in your work? Especially after his death, there's so many. Well, it seems like there's so many of us who had this weird spiritual, whatever it was, when when he died, especially among middle-aged women, and almost a realization, especially for those of us who don't have a strong spirituality, it created this sense of spirituality in us. Have you thought of incorporating any of those stories?
I think I've heard those stories.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's room for maybe someone else to do that,
Okay, yeah.
because my project is already kind of crazy right now. Yeah, so maybe you should do that. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think
we
that's
have
an excellent
we have our
point.
writer here.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, let's once more thank Erica Thompson.
Thank you.